I've decided to move on. Without you. The words didn't come from some private argument behind closed doors. No, they came from my husband, in the middle of a crowded steakhouse in Savannah, Georgia. We were there to celebrate our daughter Jenna's college graduation. But instead of raising a glass to her achievements, Charles, my husband of 28 years, decided to raise one to his freedom. The clink of forks and champagne glasses went silent. Dozens of heads turned toward our table, confusion turning to shock. I heard Jenna's soft gasp beside me, and I felt her hand stiffen in mine. She was still wearing her cap, her eyes darting between her father and me like she was trying to understand whether this was some kind of cruel joke. It wasn't. But what no one expected was my reaction. No tears, no yelling, no dramatic storming out. I smiled. "Thank you for your honesty," I said, calmly reaching into my handbag. The air grew heavier as I placed a cream envelope next to Charles's plate. He glanced at it, confused, the swagger starting to drain from his face. "What is this?" he asked. "Something you'll want to read later," I said. I leaned over and kissed Jenna's cheek. "You made us proud today. This moment is still yours." Then I stood, nodded once to our guests, many of whom had known me for decades, and walked out. My heels clicked against the hardwood as I passed by familiar faces, some avoiding eye contact, others wide-eyed in disbelief. Outside, the Savannah heat hit me like a wall, and for the first time in years, I welcomed it. Behind me, the door slammed open. I heard Charles calling my name, his voice panicked. I didn't turn back, because what he didn't know, what nobody at that table knew, was that I'd been planning this moment for months. The envelope he now clutched wasn't a love letter. It was the beginning of a reckoning. What happens when the person you sacrificed everything for reveals they never truly valued your presence? Only your silence? For those of us who have spent years holding a family together in quiet service, at what point do we stop surviving for others and start living for ourselves? Long before Charles stood up at that restaurant and embarrassed himself, I had already begun to notice the cracks. At first, it was subtle. Small transfers showing up in our joint account, $300 here, $450 there, sent to a checking account I didn't recognize. I had managed our family's finances for nearly 3 decades, and nothing escaped my eye. Charles, in contrast, had always been more interested in grand ideas than the details. He fancied himself a visionary. I was the one who kept the lights on, the tuition paid, the groceries stocked, and the mortgage current. Still, I didn't say anything right away. Not when I saw the charges from upscale restaurants I hadn't been to. Not when I noticed a tennis bracelet on our insurance renewal report, one I certainly hadn't received. I waited. I observed. And I documented. While he spent late nights in meetings and returned home smelling faintly of a perfume I'd never worn, I was combing through financial statements, collecting screenshots, and checking phone records. Eventually, I found the name tied to that mystery account. Rachel Whitman, 35 years old, an interior designer he had hired to revamp the office, as he called it. He wasn't revamping the office. He was replacing the woman who built the life he took for granted. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. That would come later, if at all. Instead, I opened the file drawer in the study and retrieved a document he probably forgot even existed. Our prenuptial agreement. We had signed it when I still had a trust fund from my father, and he had nothing but student loans and ambition. Back then, he was concerned about protecting his future empire. Ironically, that empire never came, but the prenup remained. I read it line by line until I found it. Section 14. A fidelity clause. Clearly stated, if either party is found to have committed adultery, the injured party retains all primary marital property, including the residence and majority of shared assets. He insisted on that clause himself, certain he'd never be the one to violate it. He thought it made him look serious. He didn't think I'd ever use it. I quietly consulted with an attorney in Charleston, Philip Landry, a discreet professional who specialized in financial litigation. With his help, I began building a paper trail: receipts, emails, voice messages, even travel records. I timed everything to avoid disrupting Jenna's final semester. She didn't need the weight of our broken marriage added to her already full schedule. Charles was good at lying to himself. He truly believed I was still in the dark, still playing the role of the supportive wife as he planned his new life behind my back. What he didn't know was that I had already prepared the divorce papers and placed them with the court clerk the week before graduation. They were dated, signed, and ready. He thought I'd be blind, but I was watching everything. He thought I'd fall apart, but I was setting the stage. And most of all, he thought I'd wait until he decided to end our marriage. He was wrong. I already had. When I arrived home from the restaurant, the air inside our house felt heavier than usual, as if the walls themselves knew what was coming. This was the same house Charles and I had bought together in Beaufort, South Carolina, 15 years ago. A wide, white-columned colonial, with creaky floors and fading porch swings. It was where we hosted holiday dinners, taught Jenna to ride a bike in the driveway, and built a life I thought had been shared. But stepping inside that evening, everything looked different. I climbed the stairs slowly, as if I were moving through the final scene of a play I hadn't agreed to star in. In the master bedroom closet, I found Charles's suitcases, already packed, tucked behind the laundry basket like a secret. His departure had been meticulously planned. The shirts were pressed, the ties coordinated, even his shaving kit neatly zipped. He was ready to walk out. He just hadn't realized I would walk out first. Downstairs, I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen island. The silence was soothing. My phone, however, wasn't. It buzzed with texts from people still at the restaurant, some asking if I was okay, others pretending they didn't know what Charles had meant. Jenna had messaged me too. I replied only to her. "I'm okay. This isn't your fault. Enjoy your moment. We'll talk tonight. I love you." I had protected Jenna from this chaos for months, letting her finish her final semester without the burden of our unraveling marriage. Now, the truth had broken through the surface, like a dam giving way. An hour later, I heard the tires crunching on our gravel driveway. The front door slammed. Heavy footsteps. And then his voice. "Elaine!" I closed my laptop and waited. Charles came storming into the room, still wearing the suit he had worn to the graduation brunch, but now wrinkled and disheveled, the envelope crumpled in his hand. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, slamming the papers on the counter. "The end of a performance," I replied coolly. "You served me divorce papers today, on our daughter's graduation?" I stood slowly, facing him squarely. "I thought it lined up well with your big moment. You wanted to make an announcement, Charles. I just made one of my own." His face twitched with confusion and something darker, fear. "You can't do this to me," he barked. "I already have." He paced like a man searching for an exit in a room with no doors. "That prenup, it's expired. It was years ago." "Wrong," I said, reaching for the document from my folder. "Section 14. Read it carefully. The fidelity clause remains valid for the duration of the marriage." "You broke it, Charles." He stopped moving. "You've always been so calculating," he hissed. "No," I corrected. "You were reckless. There's a difference." His eyes dropped to the floor, but only for a second. "You recorded our conversations?" "Only the ones where you and Rachel discussed stealing from our shared accounts and how to publicly humiliate me. You know that's illegal. Not in South Carolina. One-party consent. And this is my home. Your voice, your words, your plan." He lunged for his phone. "I need to make a call." "Your attorney might be a good place to start," I offered. "I'll stay at the condo tonight." "The one you tried to rent with our joint credit?" I raised an eyebrow. "That lease was never finalized. The agent called the house line. I handled it." He looked stunned, like a magician who had run out of tricks. "And for the record," I added, grabbing my keys. Your sister knew about Rachel months ago. She confronted you. You lied. Then she came to me. Lynn, he whispered, as if her name betrayed him more than anything else. I nodded. She's the one who helped me find my lawyer. Charles sank into the armchair like he'd aged 10 years in an hour. Everyone's turning against me. No, Charles, you pushed them away. As I moved toward the door, he tried one last tactic. What about Jenna? She'll hate you for this. I turned slowly, anger rising. Don't you dare bring our daughter into this. She worked 2 jobs to help pay her way through school, while you bought Rachel jewelry and wine tastings. You don't get to act like the wounded party. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced down and winced. She's at the condo already, he muttered. Rachel moved in. Moved into an apartment you don't have? I said with a dry smile. She'll be thrilled. I left him sitting there, unraveling in real time. This wasn't the moment I became free. That had happened long before. But this was the moment he realized it. Elaine had barely finished changing the locks when Jenna showed up at her Aunt Lynn's bungalow just after sunset, still in her graduation dress. Her makeup was smudged from crying, and her heels were in her hand. She looked like a young woman who had just been pulled out of a dream and thrown into someone else's nightmare. The moment Elaine opened the door, Jenna collapsed into her arms like she used to when thunder terrified her as a child. I don't understand, Mom. Why didn't you tell me? Elaine held her tight, brushing strands of hair from her daughter's damp forehead. Because I didn't want to taint your last year of college with something that wasn't yours to carry. You earned that diploma on your own. You deserved one day without chaos. Jenna pulled back slightly, her voice catching. Well, Dad certainly took care of ruining that. Inside, Aunt Lynn poured them both glasses of iced tea, while Elaine shared the full story. How she'd uncovered Charles's affair, tracked the hidden transactions, and uncovered the lies he had built with Rachel. Jenna sat in silence, listening to every detail with wide, wounded eyes. I knew something was off, Jenna finally said. He was always on his phone, distant, but I thought maybe he was stressed about money or work. I didn't think— You weren't supposed to think that, Elaine said gently. Children should never be forced to wonder if their parents are destroying each other behind closed doors. Before more could be said, the doorbell rang. Lynn peeked through the curtains and frowned. It's Charles, and she's with him. Elaine's breath caught. Rachel? Lynn nodded grimly. He brought her here? Elaine's instinct was to bolt the door, but she felt Jenna's hand slip into hers. Steady. Strong. Let them in, Jenna said quietly. I have things to say. Lynn opened the door. Charles stepped inside first, jaw tight, eyes darting between the 3 women. Rachel followed a step behind, clearly uneasy. She was well-dressed, younger, with perfectly styled blonde hair, and the guarded expression of someone used to walking into cold rooms. Elaine, Charles began, trying for calm. We need to talk, like adults. The accounts, the house. This can't go on. Jenna stood up. Adults? You mean like the one who decided to nuke our family over brunch? Charles turned to her, blinking in surprise. Sweetheart, this doesn't involve you. No, Jenna said, her voice trembling but loud. You don't get to say that. You hugged me that morning, told me how proud you were, and then blew up our lives before dessert. That absolutely involves me. Rachel shifted her weight, looking at Charles for reassurance she clearly didn't receive. This isn't the place, she muttered. No, Lynn snapped, arms crossed. But you're here anyway, so let's talk. Charles tried again, now looking at Elaine. What happened to you? You used to be reasonable, rational. Now you're freezing accounts, shutting me out of my own house. Elaine didn't blink. You planned to leave me. You prepared for it. You moved money behind my back. You signed a lease with someone else. I just beat you to it. Jenna turned to Rachel. Did you know he was going to humiliate my mom in front of 50 people? Rachel's mouth opened, then closed. She looked down. He told me he'd talk to her privately. I didn't know. I thought it would be different. Different how? Jenna demanded. Classier? Cleaner? Less painful? Charles's patience cracked. Enough! You don't understand what your mother's done. She's taken everything. I took what the prenup entitled me to, Elaine said coldly. You read the clause, Charles. Or maybe you didn't. Section 14. Marital infidelity voids your claim to shared assets. It was your idea, remember? Rachel turned sharply to him. Wait, you knew that clause was in there? Charles ignored her. I made a mistake, okay? But we can fix this. No, Elaine interrupted. You don't get to rewrite the story. You lied. You cheated. You planned this for a year. I'm just finishing the chapter. Charles turned to Jenna, softening his voice. Please, honey, I'm still your father. Jenna looked at him, her face pale but resolute. Maybe. But you're not the man I thought you were, and right now, I can't even look at you. Rachel, visibly shaken, tugged his sleeve. We should go. Elaine didn't speak. She didn't need to. She had already won something Charles couldn't buy back with money or apologies. The truth, and her daughter's respect. As they left, the screen door slammed behind them. Silence filled the room again, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was peaceful, and it was hers. The courtroom wasn't grand or intimidating. It was small, paneled in light oak, with the stale scent of old paperwork and lost pride. But to Elaine, it might as well have been the stage for a final reckoning. She sat beside her attorney, Philip Landry, calm and composed, dressed in a navy blue blazer Jenna had helped pick out. Across the aisle, Charles sat with his newly hired lawyer, a young associate who looked barely older than Jenna herself. He kept adjusting his tie, clearly rattled. Elaine had no intention of making a scene. She didn't need to. She had brought the truth with her, and truth didn't shout. It stood firm. The judge, a seasoned woman in her 60s, with gray curls tucked beneath her glasses, called the session to order. She was known in Beaufort for her no-nonsense demeanor and distaste for courtroom drama. Elaine appreciated that. We're here today, the judge began, to address the emergency motion filed by Mrs. Elaine Whitaker regarding asset protection and enforcement of a prenuptial agreement. Charles's attorney rose, clearly unprepared. Your Honor, we believe the prenuptial agreement is no longer enforceable due to the length of the marriage. The judge held up her hand. I've reviewed the agreement in full, she said, flipping through a thick packet of documents. Section 14, Infidelity Clause. It remains active for the duration of the marriage and includes specific language regarding financial misconduct. She looked up, eyes sharp. Are you contesting its authenticity? No, Your Honor, the attorney stammered. But, then there is no but. The judge turned to Charles. Mr. Whitaker, did you or did you not engage in an extramarital relationship while married to Mrs. Whitaker? Charles shifted in his seat. I made mistakes. The judge didn't blink. Did you funnel marital funds into a separate account without disclosure? His lawyer leaned in, whispering frantically. Charles sighed. Yes. And were those funds used to support your relationship with Ms. Whitman? He glanced at Elaine, then back at the judge. Yes. There it was. The nail. Then the clause is in full effect, the judge ruled. Joint accounts will remain frozen pending financial discovery. The marital residence will remain under Mrs. Whitaker's possession until further notice. Charles's face flushed a deep red. Elaine watched the color drain from him, the collapse of certainty. This was the man who had once told her she wasn't business-minded enough to understand big-picture decisions. The man who had insisted on a prenup when she came into their marriage with more assets. And now, the very document he had insisted on was unraveling him in front of a courtroom of strangers. This is outrageous, he muttered under his breath. The judge looked directly at him. Mr. Whitaker, what's outrageous is violating a legal agreement you requested. You made this bed. Now you can lie in it. The gavel came down with finality. Court would reconvene in 30 days for full financial disclosure. Outside, in the hallway, Charles chased after Elaine. "We need to talk," he said, lowering his voice. "Can't we just work something out privately? We were married for 28 years, for God's sake." Elaine turned to face him, her voice even. "Yes, we were. And that meant everything to me, until you decided it didn't." "Rachel's gone," he blurted. "She left last week, said she didn't sign up for all this stress." Elaine tilted her head. "You mean she didn't sign up for real life? Bills, responsibility, consequences. She thought I had more saved. I might have oversold a few things." Elaine raised a brow. "You lied to her, too. How predictable." "I still have my name," he insisted. "My business. My reputation." She didn't smile. "You had a name. You had a business that relied on my networks, my quiet guidance, and my financial sense. And your reputation? That walked out the door the same day you did." Charles looked defeated. "So this is it?" "No, Charles," she said, stepping away. "That was it. This is the aftermath." As she exited the courthouse, Elaine didn't feel victorious. She felt clear. For the first time in years, no fog, no waiting, no second-guessing, just forward. Charles had built his fantasy on a foundation of betrayal. She had built her future on preparation, patience, and principle. And now, she was free to build something real. The final hearing was set for mid-June. A humid Tuesday morning, almost exactly 1 year since Elaine and Charles had celebrated what would unknowingly be their last anniversary together. Elaine sat in the same courtroom, wearing the same calm expression she had worn at the preliminary hearing. The difference now was everything else. Charles looked diminished, his once carefully combed hair grayer, his tailored suits now replaced with something looser and less pressed. His eyes darted between the judge and the lawyer he could barely afford. Rachel was long gone, of course. The beachfront apartment never happened. The car he'd put a deposit on had been repossessed when the checks started bouncing. As the judge read her ruling, Elaine barely moved. "The prenuptial agreement is upheld in its entirety. Division of assets shall follow the stipulations outlined in the agreement. The primary residence, retirement accounts, and 70% of shared investments will remain with Mrs. Whitaker. Mr. Whitaker will retain his private account and all personal belongings not disputed." There was no gasp, no dramatic collapse, just the sound of Charles exhaling heavily, finally accepting that his carefully built illusion had been dismantled by his own hand. Outside the courtroom, he tried once more. "Elaine," he said softly, his voice stripped of its former charm. "I made a mistake. A terrible one. I let something stupid ruin what we had. But maybe—" "No," she said simply. Not harsh, not angry, just final. He looked down. "You really won't even consider it?" "That door closed the day you stood up in front of our daughter and turned her graduation into your personal exit strategy." He nodded slowly, swallowing hard. "I hope you find peace." "I already have," Elaine replied. She left him standing there, just a shadow of the man he once pretended to be. 6 months later, Elaine's new office had sunlight pouring through tall windows and plants lining the sill. The brass plaque outside read, "Whitaker Financial Transitions," a name she kept only for recognition, not sentiment. Her consultancy specialized in helping women navigate financial independence after divorce, widowhood, or career upheaval. What began as a small, quiet service had grown faster than she imagined. Her first clients were women referred by Aunt Lynn, friends from book club, and acquaintances who had whispered their own stories of hidden bank accounts and silent sacrifices. Now, she had a wait list and 2 associates. Elaine worked with compassion and precision, no judgment, no false promises, just the tools and truth they needed to protect themselves, rebuild, and move forward. Some clients cried, others raged, but all of them left stronger. Jenna called every weekend, now settled into a marketing job in Charlotte. On a visit home, she walked through the office, eyes wide. "I still can't believe how fast you made all this happen," she said, touching the edge of Elaine's polished desk. Elaine smiled. "It wasn't fast. It took 28 years to get here. I just finally stopped waiting." They sat in the break room with tea and leftover muffins from the morning seminar Elaine had hosted for retired nurses. "You know," Jenna said, sipping thoughtfully, "if Dad had just been honest from the start, he might have walked away with half." Elaine nodded. "He gambled that I'd stay quiet. But you didn't." "No," Elaine said, her voice soft but resolute. "Not this time." Later that week, she received an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a brief, handwritten note. "I saw the article in the paper. Congratulations. I always knew you were the smart one. See." She stared at the letter for a long moment before dropping it into the shredder. That version of herself, the one who stayed silent, who made herself smaller, who put dreams on hold for someone else's benefit, no longer existed. That woman had been kind, patient, and devoted. But she had also been forgotten by the one person who should have seen her. Now, Elaine didn't need anyone to see her. She had seen herself, and that was enough. The revenge hadn't been loud. It hadn't been messy. It had been quiet, steady, and deliberate. And in the end, it wasn't revenge at all. It was restoration. Elaine didn't burn the life she had built. She renovated it, with stronger walls, clearer windows, and a lock only she held the key to. And for the first time in decades, the home she lived in, within and without, truly belonged to her. One of the most powerful lessons from Elaine's story is that quiet strength and preparation often speak louder than any public confrontation. Her journey reminds us that betrayal, no matter how devastating, doesn't have to define the rest of our lives. Instead of reacting with anger or despair, Elaine chose foresight, dignity, and calm resolve. For older adults, especially those who have given much of themselves to family or a long marriage, this story underscores the importance of never abandoning your identity or financial awareness. Life can change suddenly, and it's essential to be informed, independent, and emotionally grounded. Elaine didn't seek revenge in the traditional sense. She rebuilt herself and found peace in her purpose. Her story shows that it's never too late to reclaim your voice, rebuild your life, and create a new chapter that honors your true worth. In the face of abandonment, Elaine didn't crumble, she transformed. And that, perhaps, is the most meaningful form of justice.